ancestors.
Yeah.
What do you
Well,
think?
I think it's true because, well, at the same time, things change over time. But the people that I've been talking to, they were, of course, they were kidnapped from Africa, and they have different communities that were kidnapped and mixed together. But
Mhm,
but
mhm.
people I'm talking to, they actually they came from the USA. They were kidnapped to the USA, and they traveled when they were given freedom. They traveled to Trinidad. So they have an African American heritage and identity, but also Trinidad as well. And they set up their own military because they were ex-military in USA. They fought on behalf of Britain, fighting the U.S. government. Then they fought on behalf of Britain. Then they came down to Trinidad, which was a British territory, and they set up their own military company villages as ex-military people. So there was well-defended villages. Um, and the culture, especially the culture of the USA and Trinidad, they have connections. So it's the USA and Caribbean communications. I've been trying to build that as well as connecting to Africa. So I feel even if I move on today, you guys to have that communication with Trinidad would be good and have that as a headquarters. But
Okay.
it's been so. This is over 7 years of not getting anything done. And I just get frustrated. But at this point, you see what's going on. Yeah, you see what's going on in Africa. We need some sort of communication in the Caribbean. And a lot of times people will say, I just realized that there's no really communication between the islands of themselves. And it's crazy.
That
It's
is so true. That is so true.
2025. And
It's amazing, isn't
yeah,
it?
you just realize that, wait, was all this stuff going on in Africa, 80 million people? And then you look, this island is 100,000 people. This one's 20,000 people. They don't communicate. But if you
Mm.
look on Facebook, you think everybody's having some sort of unification and
Hmm.
awakening. But that's what we're here for. If we have a couple bases, these are small populations. They can communicate and organize. We just have to get our foot there. So
Hmm.
I looked at Trinidad and Jamaica as having Nigerian embassies, or they call it high commission. Even though we know the politics, international politics, don't want them to communicate with us.
That's true.
But Jamaica and Trinidad are the Nigeria headquarters, which cover places like Haiti, Barbados, Grenada, Guyana, which is it's a lot of politics. But technically, based on that alone, the Nigerian embassies in the Caribbean, basically Nigeria is in position to add them to the federation, whether they sign a deal with Igbo land community or town hall in this city or that city in the Caribbean. It's already in place for through the embassy for that to be done. But we know the politics, but on paper, and if we're consistent, I think we can force it through. But especially with
Okay.
what's going on in Africa, the wave of unity, I think we could get people to say, okay, let's sign whatever deal we need to do, village to village, and uh, the Caribbean has these autonomous communities that have African chiefs or colonels and this and that. So
Hmm.
they're not promoted because of politics, but there's people already working on African cultural government and security. So things are already in motion. Just a lot of hiccups, but I don't know
Yeah.
on your side because I know your son-in-law has Jamaican ties. Uh,
Yes.
I know because thinking of what I'm thinking, just like with Nigerians, they move out to America or uh, Canada, and they have an association where everybody talks.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
But if you go back home, it's all political parties. That's
Yeah.
so the solution becomes a vote based on where you live. So it's the same thing with the
So.
Caribbean.
Mhm.
They don't meet in their islands. They don't meet up and organize. It's just everybody votes and then steal the
Mhm.
money, and
Yeah.
then complain again, and then say that we need more votes. So, so
Oh,
so
going to doesn't that tell you that democracy is really not for us.
I don't buy that.
Greetings.
Welcome.
This is another brother from one of the islands. We've had disagreements, but most of that's my fault. Where if we were able to connect people to Igbo land directly, I wouldn't. I think solutions would be made. Me, I wasn't born there. I don't know the language. I have connections, but I don't have on ground. It needs to be on ground and Caribbean connections. So that's why I invited a lot of people. This guy, he's from this brother Ross Yasan Tafari. He was part of getting the Rastafari traditional chiefs and religion recognized in St. Kitts and Nevis, one of the northern Caribbean countries. And I counted in the past, they've been up to 5 or 6 different countries that form the federation with them. Right now, it's only 2, but in the past, it's been about 6 that are partnering with them and trying to federate and govern the Caribbean. So it's a strategic country, even though it's 2. It's been up to 6 different countries that have been partnering with them at different times. So it's a historical island. But like I said, Jamaica, Virgin Islands, Trinidad can reach other islands. And I think at this point, if the communication, if it's with Igbo land and the Caribbean islands, and we create this permanent communication, we will have achieved what Marcus Garvey did when he created his African Communities League, because he was born in Jamaica and he traveled these different islands and he saw that there wasn't anything in place to communicate information about the politics of the world or business of the world. And now that we're at this point in Africa uniting, we're seeing maybe that's the missing piece. We don't have a Caribbean communication device. So that's what we're building right now. If we just communicate, things will develop across the Caribbean. Because if you communicate, information will pass on, whether it's food, security, education, on anything. It's just all about communication. So that's what I'm aiming to do: help people with connections to Africa and Igbo land communicate with the Caribbean, because we have already Igbo land communities and immigrants already in place in these different countries. And I know I burned a lot of bridges, but I think we have enough to fix what needs to be fixed. That's what I'm saying. I have 5 flags up there. St. Kitts and Nevis will be another one. But it's just like when I go to work, you guys can all talk to each other and say, I was interested in farming. I was interested in this. And then, we need financing. And looks like she dropped. But yeah, that's what I was doing, creating a communication. Let's see. So that's.
Okay. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be back here again. It's I guess time for us to really, I guess really just bring whatever it is, whatever the strategy is, and the information to the fore, bearing in mind that a lot of people in the Caribbean might still be ignorant to some of the specific groups and organizations and or where they came from or who they should be attached to. It is very, very tough for many in the Caribbean, because many have nothing to hold on to or nothing to return to other than the fact that that whatever it is that you were taught, you feel lacking. You feel lacking that is not you. But what is you, or what should be you, you don't know. And so a lot of us are still seeking to find our way, Sankofa. And I guess that's why sometimes we may end up and tap into the sources that are available in an effort to reach out. And one might think, well, hey, you guys are not with the serious group because whatever. But many of the people in the Caribbean don't know the difference between these different groups. So a lot of education and re-education is going to be necessary along the journey, especially where the Caribbean is concerned.
Okay, I agree, but with me, because I'm so limited, even right now, my neck and my back are in pain. I don't want to diagnose it, but I got a lot of physical limitations and things like that. But what I'm seeing because of the politics of Africa being, let's say Africa's united, everybody's related on some level, and we're seeing a sweeping change of people uniting across the continent. What I'm saying is that the politics is that if the Caribbean, if any of the Caribbean islands are having a headquarters or agree, activists agree these are the headquarters, whether it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever the headquarters are. If there's communication between the islands, which Garvey, African Communities League, Garvey tried to do that from Kingston. If there's communication between the islands, then any information can be conveyed. It doesn't matter if the thing is serious or not, but the real thing is that there has to be Caribbean communication, island to island. Like this is the Caribbean, the African Caribbean chapters or the African Communities League of the Caribbean or anything you call it. We can't point to any one organization. We could say the Rastafari networks of the Caribbean, but then you have different mansions. So that's what Garvey was trying to do 100 years ago. Start with the Caribbean and get communication going. Whether it's colonialism or neo-colonialism, that's at this point, I think that's what Africa needs. If it's the Igbos that establish it, or the Akan, or Burkina Faso, or the Zulus. If anybody establishes communication, let them do it. Because at the end of the day, that's what's needed. Because the right information is going to come across as long as the islands are working together. Everybody's going to say, this is the right information. This is the best way to do it. It's just we're outsiders coming into the islands. So we kind of rely on you guys to get some things going. As far as I see, it was the Jamaica, Musa Baraka and Naya Bingi working together at one point. So that was the basis of us reaching out. But it's just Caribbean communication. That's what I think Africa as a whole needs. We think we could get the USA through the churches and the Black Panthers, even though they're fighting. But I think it's just Caribbean communication. We need headquarters, these islands working together, A, B, and C, and that's just basically it.
Well, that is that is and could be worked on. For now, like I'm saying, I am looking to head back to St. Kitts and Nevis in July, so I'll be back on the islands, physically on the ground, in the next month and a half or less. So I'll be able to do some more groundwork there physically. In terms of the Caribbean, so let's talk me and you right now. If we're gonna set up this chapter, or we're seeking to do this group within the Caribbean, we're gonna have to seek to invite some of these different organizations to, whether it's more than likely in these times, it's just what we're doing here. It's either gonna have to be like a WhatsApp chat or a Zoom chat or some one of those social media platforms where we could begin to engage the discussions and see who would be in the position to do what, and we start sorting out ourselves in relation to a lot of these different, whether it's Igbo or all these different things. A lot of things, like I'm saying, many people in the Caribbean are not familiar with a lot of these differences. So a lot is going to have to be done in terms of educating on these levels, the masses. So we will have some work to do in that regard. So
They're
yeah, because
actually
like for
most of
example,
them are the thing. The funny thing is most of them are actually related on some level. Even if you look at the dictionaries, you can compare Ethiopia to the Akan in Ghana. It's all similar. It's just
yeah,
communication
but
hasn't been established. Is the
exactly, there has not been a communication, and there would have been an intention to keep the people in the Caribbean from seeking to attach to anything African. So you'll find most people, it's only in more recent times that a lot more people are opening up to this African consciousness and seeking to want to connect with Africa. It would have been that taboo. And so there's a lot that has to be done in terms of re-educating the masses. And that's one of the things that I've been trying to get across to you. You have that, plus the fact that you have the differences in the fact that you have some territories in the Caribbean who might be French, some may be Spanish, some may be English. And so you have the differences in languages, you have the differences in culture, and the fact that yes, some would be of different groupings or that were dispersed throughout the region. And so you might find maybe a Igbo group might be more based on your research, you might find that that might be prevalent in, say, Jamaica or Trinidad or some other territory. Um, like in St. Kitts and Nevis, there's no Maroon community, so to speak, that is existing, or anything that is left of what would one may consider the ancient people. So a lot of these things like would only be done with stimulating interest, like us now forming a group and saying, hey, okay, let's seek to get people re-educated and get back in touch with themselves and seeking to do this. That is what is going to be necessary at this point. So it's as much as we should be a lot further, and we would want to think that we should be further ahead. It's where we at. It's the reality.
okay? This is
So I know it's frustrating, brother. I know it is, and I mean it's hard for you to think after Marcus Garvey and all the others who would have come forward and done so much work that we are at this point today where it seems as if we have reversed many of what was done in the past. Yeah, it's sad, it's hard, but it's the reality.
it's more. I have a physical injury I never addressed, and sometimes it flares up, and I just like to shut down conversation because the pain and progress in different areas. I try to go. It's a lot of pain I'm in, but um, like from Jacksonville, Florida, we have a Caribbean heritage here. A lot of things are being done, but there's a U.S. Virgin Islands has reached out to me. That's a USA territory, and they have a
Hmm.
congressional seat in the House of Representatives, so they have a voice for the Caribbean and Africa. So we have USVI in Jacksonville that's on board, even though they're not on WhatsApp. Um, we have a Haitian radio station, um, even though Haiti is one third of the Caribbean. So, and the language and the interaction isn't there, even though they're one third of the Caribbean. A Black Caribbean, if we say, if we do the numbers, probably one third of the Black Caribbean is Haitian, but they're not taking a leading role in organizing and the Caribbean communities and Africa. Like I could say that as a fact, they're not leading as far as it's a historical reason for that. But we have Haitian connections here in Jacksonville, in Florida, and they've reached out to Africa. So we can count USVI and Haiti as part of this movement. And then from there, I'm looking at Jamaica, which everybody knows has is almost the capital, kind of the capital of the Caribbean. Everybody's connected to Jamaica somehow. Trinidad, there's an embassy there and in Jamaica, and Grenada because of the Maurice Bishop, what he was doing with the villages, giving them a voice as far as the assembly of people, the village assembly.
Sorry.
So he was trying,
Yeah,
Maurice
but
Bishop, yeah, Maurice Bishop,
sometimes
yeah.
sometimes we look at these organizations and institutions and And then you're supposed to delve a little deeper, and you're trying to find out what are the objectives and what are the things that they're really seeking to achieve, or what is it that they're doing. And you would find sometimes that it's not necessarily along the lines of what we are thinking, in terms of, hoping to bring people together in that form of the level of consciousness. Sometimes it's just, whether it's to develop fun activities, amongst each other, because you have people in the diaspora, or, things like that. In terms of the seriousness of, really connecting to Africa, and really making, that kind of collaborative effort, sometimes it's not necessarily along that line. And so that is why we will have to be able to put forward, use whatever medium. So you see, like you said, you talk about that guy who have a radio station or something like that. We have to use our means of getting across the information. And so I do two podcasts usually weekly. One on Tuesday is called The Topics, and another one on Friday. I'm open to give you an opportunity, you and or any other member, an opportunity to, come forward and talk about what is it that you're seeking to achieve with the organization. And so that can be an effort to reach out to people, not just on St. Kitts and Nevis, because it is listened to all over the world. It is streamed on YouTube and Twitch TV as well, and also on Facebook. And we do have over 5,000 viewers who are followers or who are members of the entertainment network that we do have. So, these are just means that I'm seeking to give, opportunities for us to talk about these things. Because right now we're having this conversation, we could organize to have something like that, where you get, at least 2 hours to be on the radio, on the platform, to talk about this and share whatever other information, about the UNIA, what you're seeking to achieve with the organization of the Caribbean and people all over in the diaspora and all that, if you're open to that.
Okay. The thing with at this point with Africa, well, okay, for me, I want to focus on the Caribbean. Just me and you talking right now, because we've been doing this for a long time. You've been consistent communicating, and I didn't value that or think it was it's just now that I'm seeing after marches, the worldwide marches, I'm realizing that there's no really Caribbean forum that can receive a movement like the Sahel or spread information, whether it's anything. So I think that the cause that we were building was actually an opportunity to build that communication and receive anything, whether it was called UNIA or Caribbean talks or anything. I think like there was Curacao, for example, they had an issue there with the leaders there um, accusing each other of uh, certain things where kind of dropped them off. But even Curacao was on the call at one time. And there was discussion about St. Martin and the Dutch Caribbean being close to St. Kitts. You have connections to Jamaica and uh, Muda. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing the name. Muda Baraka,
Mutabaruka. Mutabaruka.
Muta Baruka. Yes, you have connections to Jamaica. That's 2 islands. Um, so there's, if I'm saying it only takes 5 islands, we can do that, or 5 or 6 islands to communicate permanently for a regional body for Africa. If we select, if we have a group in Africa saying these are the Caribbean communities we're going to work with for regional unity, I think that could be done. Everyone saw the marches, thousands of people coming out. We have enough people to agree what the Caribbean headquarters should be. And even, I don't see myself as the leader. And I think that that's the mark of success, when you could leave something and it continues going. So if there's a continuous communication with St. Kitts and Nevis, and strategically near USVI, If that's the partnership that we're saying right as of today, and we sign the documents, this is what this community recognizes. These are strategic communities to invest in for the region, and sign the documents. Professional people we bring on board can sign the documents and move on like that. And it's just matter of fact like that. You make history like that. I know Haiti actually. My issue that I see with Haiti is that it was called an empire, right? So it's a unity of villages and African kingdoms becoming one 200 years ago. But now everybody either wants to be the president or wants to be the new king, and they don't really communicate with each other well. That's my opinion. Every village is actually a small kingdom, and they have their royal courts and priesthoods and chiefs. And Haiti, they're
But you
arguing with
must
each other a lot
remember
of
Haiti
times.
was a multicultural society because Haiti got its freedom pretty early, and they opened up the country to any other free African that was around the world. And so during that time, during that time, that was what happened. A lot of people, even in America, who got freedom, eventually, no, as long as you landed in Haiti, you're free. Nobody could touch you. And so that's kind of what happened. And so that's why you would have had all of these different groups and societies. Because I guess when you came in, you might have sought to fit into the group or the language or the people who you can communicate with and so on, and then they will create their own societies. So the history of Haiti is very critical in the Caribbean, but even a lot of Caribbean people don't know much about Haitian history because we were whitewashed into Eurocentric thinking, and anything that is of us is not good. At this point in Jamaica, there's a lawyer who has begun to challenge the government in terms of seeking to take Obia laws off the books because they, from colonial days, they still have, Obia and voodoo and so banded and illegal on the books in some Caribbean territories. And so this brother in Jamaica is challenging the court in regards to that. So it shows how much effort was done in terms of seeking to take away anything that was associated with our culture, our spiritual practices, and our customs and traditions. That is why I'm telling you, it's very tough for us in the Caribbean who had and have no connection at all. Your names were taken away, your language was taken away, your cultural practices, your religion, everything was
Yeah,
taken. So
actually,
we know that we lack something, but we don't know what we lack because we never got a chance to experience it. And so
actually,
that's
now,
why you
now,
guys.
now that you bring that up, that brings up the University of West Indies, which connects the Caribbean. I wasn't even thinking about that, but there was a Obia. Um, there's a movement that addresses that. Um, yeah, there's a movement that addresses that with UWI and the Marcus Garvey Liberation Hall. So all that information is already in the system. There's an Igbo calendar there. There's the West University of West Indies. But there's Maroon talks in different islands and campuses, but they don't work together all that cleanly. So, but there's the University of West Indies is a forum where Africa can educate those things, at least on paper, but maybe it never gets down to the grassroots village and stores and business owners. And
Well, you see, because remember, the University of the West Indies is still, you still have to go and pay to get education, you know what I mean? So it's still a
yeah,
business. Um, so it's not exposed to everybody. And at the same time, we must remember that we're still in a country that continues, or in countries that continues to maintain the oppressive Westminster style governance structure that was never designed for the people. And they see and know that it was never designed for the people and it's oppressing the people. But they continue the status quo because the status quo benefits them. And they continue to maintain that system and continue to oppress the people mentally. And that's part of why it is so challenging because they help to continue to perpetuate that which they should have really been changing. And they continue to play the game of divide and rule and keep the people, entertained and all rivaled up with their parties and political games And so the people forget the revolution because they get handouts. They feel like they're entitled. They're being told that, oh yes, you can make it too. When the reality is, they just look out for their friends and their cronies because the system was always designed for that. The system was designed for the plantocracy to benefit, and they have just replaced the plantocracy. So what happened in the Caribbean is that the system remained. The people who were in the chairs were the Caucasian Europeans. They have moved and they are being replaced by people who look like me and you, but have the mindset of the plantocracy and continues the system that was set up by them for them, and they continue the oppression of their people by playing the same games that were being played. And we still fall for it and give them an election every 5 years, and then they get upset with Abraham Traore, who decided well, he ain't going to that, and make a different move. And so they're upset because they're not democratic. According to them, he's not a democratic government. We need a lot more of that, where the people take over and do what is necessary for them to do for their benefit.
Yep, that was Maurice Bishop. He did that, and they have Maroon
Well,
Islands,
you
and
see,
yeah,
so
yeah.
that's part of the problem. They are afraid of this, and that's why they do their best to stifle anything that would seek to empower the people to get wise enough to want to get rid of this. So it's a challenge. It's a
You,
serious
you, you're,
challenge, and they
you're,
have
you're,
got.
you're you're saying that the Caribbean leaders too, not only African leaders or continental leaders, but the Afro Caribbean leaders are doing same thing as far as
But that's
Westminster.
what I'm telling you. They
Yeah.
say because we went through the similar colonization process, and that's what a lot of people have to understand. And when you just what happened in Africa, the only difference is that you guys were colonized on your own land. In our case, we were taken from Africa and brought to these places, and so we were stripped of everything. In your case, in the case of Africa, a lot of the cultural practices were maintained because they were not able to strip everything, because they could have only colonized who they got colonized. They would have had people living in the bush still and in the hills that they would have never caught or never got caught up in that. So they were able now to maintain the customs and the traditions and the languages and whatever. In the Caribbean, none of that existed. You were beaten to accept Christianity, and anything outside of Christianity was banned. There were books that you could, even up to today, you can't import certain books into some of these territories because the knowledge, they didn't want you to get exposed to that kind of knowledge because
Wow.
so this is what I'm showing you. The brainwashing and the brain bleaching in the Caribbean is deep, my brother. That is why sometimes when people talk about they are so divided and they can't come together and so on, it was and is as a result of a design plan. So it's only some of us are able to break that barrier mentally and realize, well, hey, by now that ain't right. And, so that's what I'm saying. Then the struggle comes now where you realize that this was not the way you're supposed to be. But then you don't have access to what you should have been because we have never gotten that experience. So, like for me, I've never been to Africa. I've never been exposed to any African traditions or whatever. But I know that's where I belong. I know that that's what I need. I know that's what I desire. And many more African brothers and sisters in the Caribbean think like that. But
So
we
this is
can't say that I belong to Igbo. I can't say that I belong to this society. I would have to go there now to be able now to experience it and say, oh, okay, no wonder I felt this way. Oh, no wonder, I used to do this. Oh, no wonder we did this way. Now I could see how it connects to these set of people over here who were doing this, and it would make sense. But at this point, a
now
lot of these things,
this is this
right?
this is what the new person that I'm connected to in Igbo land. He has connections to where I'm living in Jacksonville, and he says he's going to meet with the king where maybe he has more authority. The king is going to visit here, Igbo landing, 1 hour from Jacksonville, and the Jacksonville Igbo groups are going to basically it's a regional meeting from Igbo land to Jacksonville, my area, and they say they're going to help. I think they're going to help. So with that, I could get USVI. I could probably get Haiti. I, They have a connection in Jamaica at a government level, and we can also invite them to the forum, the Jamaican Maroons, the autonomous communities. So basically, we're now St. Kitts, Nevis. That's 4 countries that we're saying our headquarters. And then if I'm looking at 2 more now. That's 6 Caribbean headquarters. I think with Curacao, we talked to them, but I think if we stick to those 6, that's enough headquarters to pass on any information. And to be honest, it gets lost in nobody says this, but a lot of these African, whether it's kings or traditional priests, they always travel. You're never going to get the complete system unless you talk to everyone. It's not only Igbo you have to talk to. You have to talk to everybody, Akan, Yoruba, Amharic, the Oromo, to see, you can learn a lot from dictionaries, but they're all related, but that's not ever going to be promoted by, we're trying to advance the movement to the point that that's okay to talk about, instead of people saying they're from Arabia and descendants of Jesus and Muhammad and all that. But
A
everybody's related.
re-education
Yeah.
process is absolutely necessary, and that's what I'm saying.
Yes,
It's gonna be hard.
it's not
It's gonna be
islands.
hard
Yeah, it's not. Look,
when
Africa's not islands where they're literally villages and empires right next door to each other. Like the Sahel, that's the Hausa Empire. You've heard of that Hausa? That's the Mali Empire. The Songhai is right there, all the way to the
Mhm.
Nubians. They're right next door. Sudan, Chad, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Niger. They're all right next door to each other. So it's not no islands where there's literally a string of communities right next door to each other that communicate to
Right.
this day. We got Nigerians with kingdoms and villages and diaspora in Sudan. And after Sudan, you got Ethiopia and the African Union. So that's why you see stuff moving fast in Africa. It's always been there. That's all I'm saying. The communication and the travel and the ability to connect the dots and say, oh, this is related to the Caribbean or this is related to that. It's there. Now we just agreed to the Caribbean headquarters. We've been talking for a long time. St. Kitts and Nevis, we pencil it in. And I think I could get at least 3 more communities on board. If I get Trinidad and Tobago for that area, I know I could get Grenada very easily. We had a brother on here earlier. He kind of said he's going to drop out, but I think we get Trinidad and Grenada for a total.
The brother who was on is from where? Grenada?
No, we didn't have another brother on. We had a woman on. She's in Toronto. She's from Igbo land, but her son-in-law is Jamaican.
Okay.
But we could. I see we could probably get 6. We'd probably agree to 6, including St. Kitts and Nevis, right next door to U.S. Virgin Islands, and that, which is crazy. But there's a Caribbean island with basically a seat in Congress, just like the Native Americans get a seat. As U.S. Virgin Islands, we have a voice that we could rally behind as Africans, and St. Kitts and Nevis is right there.
Yeah, U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, they're U.S. countries, so they do have that right in Congress. Yes. So that's what I'm saying. In the Caribbean, they would have had. I think they bought. America bought them from Denmark. I think it was Denmark. They bought Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands from. So there was always that war within the Caribbean for the lands, and so Britain got some. France got some, Spain got some, the Dutch got some, and I guess some of those, Denmark, I think, bought, America bought those countries, and then they have that. That's where I think when that happened, Alexander Hamilton left Nevis and went to the U.S. Virgin Islands. So Alexander Hamilton, the guy on the U.S. $10, is actually from my island, Nevis. He was born on Nevis. Guess you didn't know that. A little bit of history for you, but
No.
yeah. So he left and then he went to the US and was responsible for creating the treasury, developing the treasury and the money system in America. So that's why he's on the US $10 bill. He's not a president, but he was very significant in terms of the treasury, and he was born in Nevis. So, um, fun fact.
All right, that's good. That's all right. U.S. Virgin Islands, Saint Kitts and Nevis. That's a pairing right there. Jamaica and Haiti right
Yeah, and
there.
there's a lot of deep connections between the U.S. Virgin Islands and St. Kitts and Nevis as well. A lot of people who are in the U.S. Virgin Islands were from St. Kitts and Nevis, especially St. Thomas and St. Croix. Um, a lot of them are originally from St. Kitts and Nevis.
Wow. Do you have, is that from labor or recent labor or maroons or?
I wouldn't say recent. In the past, I guess when I guess like just after you would say emancipation and so on, work would have been pretty slow in my parts of the Caribbean, and so there was a lot of migration. People went to Panama to work. People went to Santo Domingo to cut cane. People went to Canada. There was the U.S. the maple, the Canada maple that used to come and take workers to work on the apple fields and so on from way back. I think there's still that relationship where there is still agricultural workers trade that goes on between Canada and the Caribbean. They would have had the Windrush where many would have also go to England to work and so on. So there was a lot of migration from the Caribbean, and so people would have stored away also on boats that used to travel between St. Thomas and St. Croix and these parts. Nevis especially, because Nevis was called the Queen of the Caribbean. Even though it was a very small island, it was one of the most productive in terms of supplying food to England and other Caribbean territories as well. So because we had the shipbuilders and people who would build ships and so on, a lot of shipment used to go on back then, shipping food stuff from here to Martinique, to Dominica, to Trinidad, to the U.S. Virgin Islands. And so I guess people went and they relocated. And so, yeah, there's a lot of people who would have left and went over there, started to work and never came back. Got children over there. Yeah.
Okay. So
So I have two uncles over there. Who went through that process and they live over there. They have their family and children over there, and one is a contractor, one is a big time chef in one of the big hotels over there. Yeah.
Okay, I understand. Thank you for your patience, and I apologize again for rudeness to people you introduced me to. Uh, no, I can make excuses, but
Oh my brother, it's cool, you know. Like I said, I have patience, you know. I mean, it's life. It's just like if you don't understand something, you know, what I mean, don't you just have patience sometimes, you know. It's not always, you know, what I mean, good to get hasty and just react, you know. We just gotta understand that sometimes that's the way it is. Somebody might not see it the way you see it at the time, and we agree to disagree, and then you come back, what I mean, the next day or some other time with another of your opinion. I don't hold malice, I don't hold, what I mean, energy. So like if somebody deal with me a particular way, I figure, well, maybe it's what they're going through or whatever. If I know I haven't done you anything, what I mean, I'm not gonna hold it against you. Like right now you come back, you talk to me, we're good, we move on, like I don't have anything. I had nothing either, even when you did, function the way you did. I'm just like, man, brother, you could take it easy a little bit and try to be a little bit more understanding, That's all for me. So I never held anything. So it's good. It's all good. Trust me. Let's just move on and get the mission done. That's what it's all about for me. We want to do this thing. Let's see how best we could do it. Yes, we're going to find that sometimes we will have conflicts and whatever it is, but let's just deal with it. You know what I mean? We're humans. I don't know what you know, and you don't know what I know. So yes, I could learn from you, and you could learn from me, and that's just how it's gonna be.
Okay. This brother in this new brother that I met is part of the Unify Igbos Now movement. I think he's going to help sign documents for some sort of official partnership, and he's going to be able to talk with you guys regularly, Saint Kitts and Nevis, even for this generation and the next generation. He's going to build that bridge, and then I feel I can get U.S. Virgin Islands from where I'm living. I can build up the same program, even though they might not be on the call. But we're just gonna. I guess we could make a write up that U.S. Virgin Islands and Saint Kitts and Nevis are going to be regional partners as far as what we're doing, as far as where we're coming from in Africa, developing that communication and things. So,
Okay, so here's what, right? Here's what. On the platform that we're on, right? That I was telling you about, that I could invite you to have an interview or a discussion to talk about some of these things, right? One of the things that I have planned, I have discussed it with the other team members, but we have not. I have not really like pushed in terms of setting a date and time for it and so on. But like I said to you, I do a show called Everything Agriculture. So that show is specific mostly to agriculture. Then there's the other one that's called The Topics. The Topics is one that deals with anything and everything that's going on. So I can specialize on a specific topic. So like, for example, like I'm telling you, if you're coming on, then on that night, more than likely would just be specifically that topic that we're going to address, and we would interview you and have the conversation and all that, right? Now, there's another program that I wanted to do that was more along the lines of Rastafari and anything African conscious or African consciousness. So this what we're talking about here. I could see myself, let's say we begin that show where we can now use that platform to have these kinds of discussions. So, it could be, whether it's maybe 1 week in a month, where we can use that session to address that. So the person from St. Croix can come in, or the US Virgin Islands, the person from Curious, or the person from St. Martin. And like it's a Zoom, because we are setting up that right now we can facilitate 4 people, but we are setting up that we can have at least 8 people on the call, right? So that way now we could have that platform where it's like every week thing where people know, well, it could be every week or it could be every once a month, that we have this discussion where we are seeking to bring the people together with what we are seeking to do.
okay.
So there's options that we can do things. I'm open to making these things happen. So that's what I'm saying. Let's make things happen in these times. This is not time to talk. This is just time to really make things happen. And it's going to take some education and re-education, and it would need, these kind of discussions and engagements, whether it's a Zoom call.
I'm gonna go. I gotta go. Somebody's banging on my door, but I gotta go.
All right, man. We catch up.